Okay, so what you should have is a 5 1/4 by 8 1/2, 8 1/4 top piece, a spine piece, your base piece, a spine piece, and then your flap all attached with your construction strips and burnished down really well. So when you fold it up, it looks like this. So like a little, actually it looks like a very skinny mini album cover. So that is what you should have in front of you. And so the next step you want to do is to apply your 2 outer flaps that are going to come together. And those are the 2 pieces here. And they'll go here where your score line. So you scored at 1 inch and you scored at a 1/2 inch and you rounded your corners. And those are going to actually slide in the back like this. And then they'll flap over your notepad. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to apply some glue to the back. You could use wet glue or you can use construction whatever tape adhesive you have. I'm gonna, for the speed and quickness to get this tutorial, I'm just gonna use some scored tape here. I'm gonna set that to the side and I'm going to apply my scored tape onto the 1/2 inch, the outer 1/2 inch section. So you have the inside and you have an outer side. You're going to score it. You're going to put your tape or your adhesive on that outer side. That is what's going to go on the bottom part of your, and if you want, you can go ahead and angle your corners just a little bit. That just really helps not seeing the cardstock once you put your designer paper down. And so then what you want to do is line that up with the base part, not going over the fold line or the scored line, just barely. You want to put that down and you're going to turn it over and you're going to give it a good burnish. Okay. You're going to cover this anyway with some designer paper. And then you're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other flap. We're just going to put that on that outer flap, not going over the scored line. It's alright if you hang over a little bit on that outer edge, because again, we're going to add some designer paper onto that flap. This is just going to hold it in place. So you want to burnish really well. You want to snip off any on the side, just a little bit on the side. Snip that a little bit more. So you want to snip that a little bit more, and you want to take your tape off if you're using tape. If you're gluing down, just go ahead and glue it down. And then you're going to take and line up the top and bottom edge. Don't go over that score line, but you do want to line up as accurately as possible. And you want to line that up and just take your time. Once you get it down and you're happy with it, then you can go ahead and burnish on the back side. So what you should have is your top cover, the flap, and the bottom flap. So essentially it goes like this, and it'll go like this, and then it'll see, it's a nice little box for your notepad. So remember, our notepad is going to, let me just get it out here. Our notepad's going to go on that base, so you really don't have to cover this with paper. Not unless you want to. This particular pad has a magnet in it, and all I really did was cut the magnet out. But it's going to sit, or you could leave it if you want. So your notepad's going to sit like that, and then you're going to fold. So that makes a nice little crisp holder for your notepad. And then this squares up like this, just like that. Okay? So now we can start adding some embellishments to, I'll put the notepad on last, to our holder. So I'm going to flip this over. For the left side of the notepad holder on the outside, this is the piece that I am going to use there. And then I'll use another piece, and I'll show it to you later, on the opposite side. So I'm going to put that down first, and I'm going to use some wet glue on it. And I'm just using a mixture of the Aleene's tacky glue. And then what I do is I just mix a little bit of water till I get it to the consistency that I like on my glue, on my wet glue. And so I'm just going to put some around the perimeter, but you can use whatever you want, your ATG gun, score tape, whatever other adhesive you like. So I'm just going to put that on there, and I've already rounded my corners, and I'm going to line it up, press it down, and then I'm going to also just go ahead and burnish really well. Burnish really well. And then you can just wipe off any excess glue you may see. This glue dries pretty clear, so it's gorgeous papers here that I'm working with. And then I'm going to get my other piece of paper that I have rounded here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to glue it on, I'm going to add my adhesive around the edge, and apply it to the outer side of that pocket flap. Okay. I'm just going to add my glue to the opposite side, making sure I've lined up. You kind of want to make sure you're lined up with this other one so that when you close it, it looks straight. So I'm just going to go ahead and burnish down really well here. Okay. And then for our back flap, this is what I've chosen. So I am going to go ahead and glue that down. Okay. And just make sure you're all squared up nicely here between all of your folds. And you're going to press that down and burnish really well. Wipe off any excess adhesive. Just make sure you really got your corners down. That doesn't want to stay down in the center. Okay, so this is the outer part of your flaps in your back, and then you have your top flap to do. So I'm going to flip it over here, and I'm going to adhere my next piece down for that bottom flap. This flap right here, okay? So let me go ahead and do that. And hold it up so you all can see. So we are adhering this piece to the 5 1/4 by 8 1/4 inch flap, and that's just flush right to the edge. So that's going down on our 5 1/4 by 8 1/4 inch flap, chipboard flap. Okay, you want to make sure you're all lined up. And if for some reason you got a little paper on the edge, you can just take your craft knife and trim that off. We'll see in a minute when I flip mine over if I'm over it anyway. Okay. So if you see any paper on the sides, which I don't, you can just trim those off. So that's the outer part of our top flap. And then we're going to do the outer part of our bottom flap. Ooh, this thing is getting a little out of control. But you're going to take that piece, this piece here that you cut for your layer, and you're just going to go ahead and glue that up with your adhesive and place that down onto your cover. And again, just take your tool and burnish really well. Okay, we're getting there. So, pad goes in the center, flaps go in. That's already looking great with those gorgeous papers from the Flight 2715. And then flap comes down, flap comes up. Looking good, right? Okay. So now we want to do this inside, these two inside flaps right here. These two right here. And for that you have your pocket piece. And your pocket pieces should be 5 1/4 by 5 1/4. 5 1/4 by 5 1/4, and you scored at 1/4 inch on 3 sides. So you're gonna burnish your score lines. On 3 sides. Now I like to take and trim at an angle here. So this is the bottom part of my pocket. I'm going to trim that right where it intersects there. So again, I'm going to trim that down right where it intersects. And then also take a corner snip at the top part of the pocket. That way you don't have a lot of cardstock showing, and it also reduces a little bit of the thickness of the cardstock. Okay, so then you want to take your matting pieces, which I have here, and let me get my punch. I should have had it ready, but I didn't. So let me get my punch. Sorry about that. I'm going to get my punch, and I'm using my 2 inch by 1 3/8 Stampin' Up! Oval punch. And if you want to do this, you don't have to. You can punch a little notch out, but I am going to do it this way. I'm going to first put some adhesive on my mat, and then I will then punch my. So whoopsie, getting a little wild here. So I'm going to line up, get that glue off. I'm going to line up my mat for my pocket, and I'm going to burnish really well. And then I'm going to, this is just the way I want to do it today. You can do it however you want to. Line it up and punch. And that's how I'm going to make my pocket notch. So whatever side you want to use, you want to take and put adhesive onto the outer part of that flap. Okay. And this goes at the bottom. Now I did round my corners. I don't mind my corner being rounded and my pocket not being rounded. If you don't like it, what you can do is just, what I'm doing here is just go above that rounded part of your flap. Let's remove whatever amount of glue is there. Good thing this glue dries. The downside of using wet glue is that you may get a little run over, but if you're using a glue that disappears pretty much, you can just wipe the extra off and you won't see it. Okay, so then you want to adhere this down really well because it's a pocket and you're going to be in and out of it, or the recipient will be. Okay, so that is our pocket here, and one of these tags will fit in here. Okay, so that's one pocket, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side for the other pocket. I am going to, the top parts here. I'm going to burnish my score lines. They are really going to town on that construction across the street. Okay, and then I'm going to, this is my piece I'm going to use to mat my pocket with. I'm going to glue that down. Okay, and I'm going to burnish. And then I'm going to take a notch out. Then I'm going to apply my adhesive onto these flaps here on the three sides. Maybe I won't put as much as I did. I got a little carried away on the other side. And then I am going to lay down my pocket. Going to make sure it's not on that fold line.